Right. So today we're going deep on the Kanye West situation.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, there's no other way to say it than it's pretty horrific, the allegations being made against him. What are your initial thoughts?
Yeah. I mean, even just saying Kanye West right now, it's unavoidable to not think about all the baggage that comes with that name.
Right.
Before even getting into these new allegations, he's already someone who is seen as controversial. So I think that's something important to keep in mind as we go through all this.
Absolutely.
And in terms of the actual content of what we're talking about,
Yeah.
it's heavy stuff. I mean, we're talking about sexual assault. And I think it's important to say up front that these are just accusations, right?
Of course.
He hasn't been found guilty of anything in court. But just the nature of the accusations themselves, I think, are serious enough to warrant this conversation.
Definitely. Definitely.
And when you look at who is making these accusations, it adds another layer. You
Yeah.
know, this is his former personal assistant, Lauren Pisciotta.
Right. Who a lot of people might know as an influencer, OnlyFans model, that kind of thing.
Exactly. And she worked for him for a while, so it's not like this is some random person making these claims. This is someone who was in his inner circle.
Right. She worked for him, what was it, like 2021, 2022?
Yeah, something like that. And what's interesting is she actually already had a lawsuit against him. This wasn't the first time she'd come forward. But these new accusations are what she's added to that existing lawsuit. So it's definitely raising the stakes.
Yeah. Can you tell us a little bit more about that? What was in the initial lawsuit?
Right. So initially, she was suing him for wrongful termination and sexual harassment.
Uh-huh.
So this lawsuit was already pretty serious, but it was more focused on inappropriate behavior in the workplace.
Right, and now with these new allegations, it's a whole other ball game.
Exactly. I mean, now we're talking about potential criminal charges. And I think what's interesting from a legal standpoint is, amending a lawsuit like this, it's a very specific strategy. And it makes you wonder what her legal team is thinking.
Yeah, it definitely makes it seem like they have something concrete to back it up.
Right, because if you make these kinds of accusations and you don't have the evidence, it could backfire pretty badly. So it'll be interesting to see how that all plays out.
Definitely. So let's dive into the actual accusations themselves. What exactly is she claiming happened?
So the alleged assault is supposed to have taken place back in 2021 at a party. Kanye and Sean Diddy Combs were throwing a party at a music studio in Santa Monica. Just picturing that scene, the people there, it's
I know, it's a lot.
a lot, and it just speaks to the kind of environment we're talking about.
Right, and I mean, these are two powerful men at the top of their game in the music industry.
Exactly, and I think that power dynamic is going to be a big part of this whole thing. You've got someone like Kanye West, who is known for being very, I don't know, demanding, let's say.
Right.
And then you have all these people around him who are probably afraid to say no to him, to stand up to him.
Right, afraid to jeopardize their careers, their connection.
Exactly. So she's alleging that at this party, Kanye was pushing everyone to drink heavily, creating this environment where you feel pressured to keep up.
And so she's saying that, what, he basically got her drunk and took advantage of her?
Well, it's not entirely clear how much she claims she had to drink, but she does say that she started feeling disoriented, kind of like she was slipping in and out of consciousness. She woke up the next day with almost no memory of what happened.
And that's unfortunately something that we hear a lot in these kinds of cases.
Absolutely, and it makes it so much harder to come forward because you're already second-guessing yourself.
Right, you don't even fully know what happened, so how can you even begin to process it or report it?
And then there's the shame, the self-blame that often comes with these situations. It can be incredibly isolating and make it feel impossible to speak out.
It's heartbreaking, and it makes you wonder, how long did she carry this burden? Because according to what we're reading, she didn't even remember the alleged assault until Kanye himself told her about it.
Right, and that is just wild. Can you imagine being in her shoes, having your boss casually reveal to you that he assaulted you?
And not just any boss. I mean, we're talking about Kanye West. That level of power imbalance is
It's
just...
hard to even fathom.
So how does he even bring it up? I mean, what's the context for him just casually dropping this bombshell on her?
So according to the lawsuit, he was in the middle of an argument, and this is where it gets even more like messy and kind of, tabloidy.
Okay.
He was arguing with his ex, who's not explicitly named in the suit, but it's heavily implied to be Kim Kardashian.
Right, right.
And he's telling Pisciotta about this argument, and apparently his ex had accused him of cheating on her with Pisciotta.
Oh, wow. So he's basically confiding in her about this fight.
Yeah, and I mean, think about that power dynamic again.
Yeah.
She's his employee, he's this huge celebrity, and he's putting her in the middle of this personal drama.
Right, and she probably feels like she can't say no, can't tell him to back off.
Exactly. So she's trying to defend herself, saying that nothing happened between them, and she even offers to text his ex to clear things up.
And that's when he drops the bomb.
Yeah, that's when he allegedly says something like, well, we did kind of hook up that one time, as if it's no big deal.
Wow, just casually admitting to assault in the middle of an argument about something else entirely.
Right, and I think that says a lot about how he viewed the situation, how he viewed her.
Like,
Yeah,
he didn't even register it as something that would be upsetting to her or that she would even remember.
exactly, and it gets worse because she tells him, I don't remember anything after sitting on the couch that night.
And how does he react to that?
He laughs and says something like, women love to say they don't remember.
Oh my God.
I mean, it's just so dismissive, so disrespectful.
Yeah.
It's like he's trying to invalidate her whole experience.
Yeah, it's a classic tactic, right? Trying to make her doubt her own memory, her own perception of what happened.
Absolutely, and it's something we see time and time again in these cases. It's a way to shift the blame, to make the victim feel like they're in the wrong.
Right, like she's making a big deal out of nothing. It's infuriating.
Absolutely. And I think it's important to point out that this kind of gaslighting, it can have a really damaging effect on the victim's psyche.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, we're talking about potential trauma on top of trauma. It's awful.
Exactly. So even if nothing else had happened that night, that conversation alone is enough to show how Kanye was using his power over her, how he was manipulating the situation.
Absolutely. So we've talked about the new allegations, but let's go back to the legal side of things for a second.
Yeah.
What exactly was in the initial lawsuit? What was she accusing him of before these new allegations came out?
Right. So the initial lawsuit was focused on two main things: wrongful termination and sexual harassment. So she claimed that he fired her without cause and that while she was working for him, he created a hostile work environment.
And what kind of things was he doing that she considered harassment?
Well, she claimed that he sent her inappropriate text messages,
Hmm.
that he would share his sexual fantasies with her, even send her explicit photos and videos.
Wow, so this wasn't just like a one-time thing. This was a pattern of behavior.
Right, and it seems like she's trying to show a pattern of him abusing his power, of him not respecting boundaries.
And it makes you wonder if these new allegations are true, was this part of a larger pattern of him preying on women he had power over?
It's certainly something to think about.
Mhm.
And from a legal perspective, adding these new allegations to the existing lawsuit, it definitely changes the game.
Right. I mean, before we were talking about a civil case, about money, about reputation, but now we're talking about potential criminal charges.
Exactly, and that puts a lot more pressure on Kanye and his team. They can't just brush this off as a nuisance lawsuit anymore.
Right. And it'll be interesting to see how they respond to these new allegations because so far they've been pretty quiet.
Yeah, I mean, when the initial lawsuit was filed, they came out swinging, denying everything, calling her a liar, accusing her of extortion.
Right. So you would think that if they had a strong defense against these new allegations, they would have already said something.
Right, you would think so. So their silence is definitely speaking volumes.
Okay, so we've talked about Kanye's side of things, but what about Diddy? He co-hosted this party where the alleged assault took place. So does he have any liability here?
So to be clear, Diddy is not named in this lawsuit at all. His name only comes up because he was the co-host of the party.
So as far as we know, Pisciotta isn't accusing him of any wrongdoing.
Right, at least not in this particular lawsuit. But that being said, Diddy's got his own legal troubles right now.
Oh, right. I'd almost forgotten about that. What's going on with him?
Well, he's facing some pretty serious charges right now, completely unrelated to this case. Criminal charges for sex trafficking, and then multiple lawsuits alleging sexual abuse.
Wow. So even though he's not directly involved in this case, it's still part of this larger conversation about the music industry and its problems with consent and abuse of power. So we've got these two massively influential figures in music, both accused of really similar things. It makes you wonder if this is just the tip of the iceberg.
It really does. And it's not just music, right? We've seen this in Hollywood, in politics. It's everywhere.
It's like this reckoning is happening across industries.
Totally. And it makes you think, why now? What is it about this moment in time that's allowing these stories to come to light?
Right, because it's not like this stuff hasn't been happening for years, decades even.
Exactly. And I think there are a lot of factors at play here. Social media has definitely played a role, giving victims a platform to share their stories.
And the hashtag #MeToo movement, it created this space where people felt empowered to speak out, to hold abusers accountable.
Absolutely. And I think as more and more people come forward, it creates this snowball effect. It gives others the courage to come forward too.
And hopefully it creates this environment where abusers are less likely to act in the first place because they know they'll be held accountable.
That's the goal, right? to change the culture, to shift the power dynamics so that these kinds of abuses are no longer tolerated.
Absolutely. But it takes more than just individual stories coming out. We need systemic change, too.
100%. We need to look at the systems that allow this behavior to flourish, the power structures that protect abusers.
And that's a much harder conversation to have because it requires us to look at the bigger picture, to examine our own biases and complicity.
It's uncomfortable, for sure,
Yeah,
but it's necessary if we want to see real, lasting change.
it is. In this case with Kanye, it's like a microcosm of that larger conversation. If these accusations are true, what does it mean for him? What does it mean for the music industry?
Right. Does he face any real consequences? Is this a turning point for the industry, or will it just be business as usual?
It's a lot to unpack, and honestly, I don't have the answers. It's scary to think that someone with that much power, that much influence, could be capable of these kinds of things.
It is.
Yeah.
And it's a reminder that we can't just blindly follow these celebrities, these powerful figures. We need to hold them accountable.
We need to demand better, and we need to support the people who are brave enough to speak out, to share their stories.
Absolutely, because it's those stories that have the power to create real change.
Well said. And on that note, I think we need to wrap up this deep dive. It's been heavy, it's been uncomfortable, but it's been so important.
I agree. I think this is a conversation that needs to continue, and I hope that our listeners will keep thinking about these issues, keep talking about them.
Absolutely. And if you or someone you know has been affected by any of the issues we've discussed today, please reach out for help. There are resources available. You don't have to go through this alone.
And remember, it takes courage to speak out, to share your story, and you will be believed, you will be supported.
Thanks for joining us for this incredibly important deep dive. Until next time, stay informed, stay engaged, and stay safe.